Good morning, everybody. I'm Weather and Radar Meteorologist Becca Parker. If you're just tuning in, we are going over what's going on with Tropical Storm Ophelia, as you can see here on the screen right behind me. I did post the link to download our free app so you can follow along within it and learn the tools that I'm going to be going over that you can use not only today if you're being impacted by Ophelia, if you know somebody that's being impacted, but also for future reference for upcoming weather. So that's completely free and you can see the forecast for that as well. I apologize if it's a little dark on me. I'm in Western Maryland and I'm receiving Tropical Storm Ophelia. And it's pretty dark and it's hard to control the lighting around me. So all that's important is that you can see the content behind me in the maps and what I'm going to be showing. So good to go there. Please leave comments in the comment section if you have any questions at all about the situation going on. And I'll be checking them throughout the live today as we go over all of this information. So be sure to drop it in the chat. Let me know where you're at. Say hi. And I'll be checking those throughout the live today. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Yeah, so what you see behind me here is Tropical Storm Ophelia. It is churning across North Carolina. It made landfall this morning near Emerald Isle, right on the beach there at 6:20 a.m. Eastern Time. And that had 70-mile-an-hour sustained winds with higher gusts. So a lot of gusty winds coming from Ophelia as it did make landfall this morning. We got storm surge that we're keeping an eye on, more gusty winds, even as far north as into Pennsylvania, into New England here, as Ophelia spreads through. And then we've got some flooding rains as well to keep an eye out for. So we're going to be going over a lot today as we address the Ophelia situation. If you know somebody that's being affected by Ophelia that may not know that we're going live right now, send them a link and I'll be able to go over the information that they can get, or they can watch it later just so they can get all the latest updates. Alrighty. So yeah, like I said, this is Tropical Storm Ophelia. You can see if you can see my cursor here, let me make sure. Perfect. All right, you can see right on here, this is where Emerald Isle is. That's where it made landfall this morning at 6:20. And it did move further inland into far eastern North Carolina. That's where it's at now. But you can see the rain bands just stretching as far north as Pennsylvania, getting into southern New York, and even into Massachusetts here, where Boston's going to start getting some rainfall from Ophelia. And we are going to be monitoring this for the rest of the weekend, because this is really going to just move across the mid-Atlantic throughout tonight, into tomorrow, and even into Monday, where we expect it to be a tropical depression over the Delaware area, Delaware Bay area. So let's get into what the issues with Ophelia that we are monitoring are. So let me bring that up here. Alrighty, here we go. So like I said before, we do have Tropical Storm Ophelia over far eastern North Carolina. You can see the tropical storm track here that we expect it to take before it turns into a depression. Just in southern Maryland, probably early Sunday. But we do have tropical storm warnings extending all the way from central North Carolina coastline, all the way up into the Chesapeake Bay, and even into southern Delaware here. So a lot of people are being impacted by this. And today's the first day of fall as well. So likely that many vacations have wrapped up, but if not, and you were impacted by this, there's a good reason why you may not have been able to get to the beach this weekend, obviously. So we do have those tropical storm warnings extending all the way up into the Chesapeake Bay and into southern Delaware here. And those are going to continue throughout today and maybe even into tomorrow, as the winds are still going to be pretty gusty, even as it turns into a depression. So that's what the forecast is currently. Let me double check for any questions here as we are moving through this morning. Let me double check here. Alrighty, perfect. And again, drop any questions you do have. Alrighty. So yes, this is the cone of uncertainty here. If you've not used one of these cones of uncertainty before, what it means is the center of the storm could be anywhere within this cone here. It could be over here, it could be down here. That's what the current forecast has it as, where it could be anywhere within that area. So never follow just the midline of that cone as far as where you think the center is going to be. It's always going to be just around that area. It's never definite because forecasts are hard, especially with tropical storms and tropical systems, to make sure we know exactly where the center is. So just take that with a grain of salt as far as being the center being always in the middle. It could always be anywhere around that cone. Alrighty, so let's take a look at some impacts that we're expecting from Ophelia. This is from the National Hurricane Center. I mentioned earlier how we're watching a lot of storm surge possibilities from this tropical storm, and this extends all the way from central North Carolina all the way up into central New Jersey, the Delaware Bay, and the Chesapeake Bay as well, where storm surge on top of high tide already is going to be up to 3 feet for some areas, even up to 4, maybe 5 feet for the North Carolina areas here, especially 3 to 5 feet for Pimlico and Pungo rivers in North Carolina here. So that's a lot of water on top of high tide. If you already know what high tide is, if you're looking at the docks, if you're at the Outer Banks or anything like that, and you see that water, just think of 3 to 5 feet on top of that. That's why we see a lot of coastal flooding with these storms, because it's literally pushing in water from the Atlantic as it churns in a counterclockwise fashion. So it's pushing in all of that water, and that's why we see surge. In addition to the winds pushing all that water as well. So we do have the storm surge impacts happening even up and through Virginia, Chesapeake Bay, Delaware Bay, and then into central New Jersey. This is expected over the next couple of days. And you should, if you are along the coast, if you are still along the coast, just be sure to monitor that. Stay away from any flooded roadways. You got the rain on top of that too, so roadways are likely going to be flooded in addition to that surge. So just something to keep an eye out for. And if you're used to driving through those flooded roadways, you probably don't anymore. The flooded roadways, you never know if that roadway is actually still under there anymore. A lot of the times it washes out. So it's really dangerous to drive through those flooded roadways. So turn around, don't drown. You don't want to get yourself into a situation like that. Alrighty, let's take a look too. So yes, I mentioned the rainfall as well from Ophelia. So general areas that are getting the largest amount of rainfalls extend from the far eastern North Carolina, the central portions as well, all the way up through eastern Virginia, Maryland, and into the New Jersey area, as well as Long Island. We're going to be seeing 2 to 4 inches of rainfall with outward areas that you can see in the lighter green here across the mid-Atlantic. 1 to 2 inches of rainfall expected. This is through the weekend and until 8 a.m. on Monday as Ophelia does move through. So just something to keep an eye out for. In addition, those that are not along the coast could also be seeing flooding inland just because of the heavy rainfall in areas that don't handle water very well. A lot of the downpours that are happening in these areas can quickly cause flooding issues. So just keep an eye on anything that's blocked off. Again, turn around, don't drown. If you're seeing water-covered roadway or path, there's also stuff in it too, with all those gusty winds knocking stuff down. There's likely stuff in that water that you don't want to be walking or driving through and could possibly cause an accident. So again, just turn around. In addition, speaking of the winds knocking stuff down, there are power outages mostly across North Carolina and Virginia. When I last looked this morning, about 47,000 customers were out of power across eastern North Carolina. And then it was close to 14,000 customers across southeastern Virginia this morning. And that's no wonder with the winds. I think right now, let's take a look at what the winds are with the latest update coming from the National Hurricane Center as they're monitoring it. Current winds are at 50 miles an hour. Those are sustained winds. And then you got higher gusts. So those winds can quickly knock out power, can knock down a tree limb, can knock down a tree. That can also take down power lines as well. So a lot of issues coming from Ophelia, but as long as you hunker down and you stay safe indoors, should be good to go, So let's take a look here too at the flash flooding expected. Alrighty. So like I said earlier, let me turn, there we go. Like I said earlier, those areas where we're going to see the most flash flooding from the areas getting like 2 to 4 inches of rainfall is going to be here in east central North Carolina into southeastern Virginia. This is including Richmond across this area here. So you got at least a 40% of that area likely receiving some flooding rains in that spot. And there's some areas that are under drought right now too. So if you think about if areas also just don't have an easy time soaking in any water quickly, if they got poor drainage, think about drought areas too, where you've got really dry ground that's not able to soak in water very quickly. It causes a lot of runoff, more flooding issues. I said it earlier, I'll say it again, turn around if you do come to a water-covered roadway or path. So we are likely to see some flash flooding here across these areas, and that's extending all the way from the Carolinas here up into New England. So keep an eye on that. Keep an eye on your weather radar. This is going to show you the rain rates as we go through. And I'll bring that back up here as well so we can just pay attention to what that looks like. Alrighty, so yeah, let's talk about the features that you can see here on the weather radar so you can actually monitor them through Ophelia and then later on through more weather that's going to be coming throughout the rest of the seasons. So you've got the blue here, which is the rainfall, and the darker blue you get, let's zoom in here. The darker blue you see are the heavier rainfall rates. So lighter blue, lighter rainfall, darker blue, heavier rainfall. And if it gets into the purple ranges, that's when you've got some really heavy rainfall, likely flash flooding happening in those areas. So those downpours you want to stay away from as well. So stay indoors. Best thing to do through these situations. And it's first day of fall. Maybe you're making soup, maybe you're getting cozy. This is the perfect time to do it. And it's got temperatures as well. We got temperatures here in the 60s, even in the 50s across this area. And a large part of that has to do with, especially in the areas that are across the Appalachians here, as the low pressure churns in a counterclockwise fashion, you'll notice that winds are going to be coming out of the northwest for many, northeast for many and north for many. So it's going to be kind of chilly, getting those cooler temperatures coming in as well. 50s here across New England, southern New York as well. So a little chilly today. Best thing to do is just stay indoors. Let's take a look at Ophelia's wind field while we're at it too. You can look at the wind radar to see just how strong Ophelia is, not just in addition to the heavy rainfall that we are seeing. Alrighty. So this is the wind radar showing the gusts from Ophelia. You can see the counterclockwise churn here. Pretty neat to see across eastern North Carolina, where the central portion of Ophelia currently is, just south of Greenville here. And you've got gusts into 40-mile-an-hour zones all across North Carolina here, even higher here in the coastal areas where we're likely seeing a lot of surge coming in here. Down here, this is about Moorhead area, Emerald Isle. A lot of storm surge probably moving in, especially with that wind, and we're getting into high tide zones here soon as well. So you're going to see that surge kind of kick up here too. And you can see the wind field does extend all the way from South Carolina even into New England here. So we got some gusty winds coming through. So Ophelia is going to cause some issues, but again, stay indoors. Best thing to do through this kind of situation. All right, let me double check for any questions before we wrap up here. Yeah, you're welcome, definitely. And we are going to be updating you throughout the day on our social media pages. I've linked them below in the description, as well as on the app. We've got updates going out there as well. And we've got our colleague, Jonathan Petramala, out in the field. He's going to be taking some footage of what's exactly going on across North Carolina here and maybe getting up into Virginia to see the impacts from Ophelia. So be on the lookout for that as well. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. Stay safe, those of you that are in line for Ophelia. And yeah, we'll talk to you soon.